Hey everyone, my name is Patrick, and thank you for joining us on Create, Post, Repeat, a podcast all about the content creation journey. Many of you are going to recognize my guest today. I am so excited to welcome my new friend, Omar, to the podcast. Omar is a creator at Think Media. He runs his own business called The Video Department, and he's a pastor at his local church in Vegas. And we get into all of that in this episode. So let's just jump right in. Welcome, everybody. We are so glad that you've joined us on the podcast, but I want to give a special welcome to my new friend as of 30 seconds ago, Omar El-Takrori from the Video Department and Think Media. Omar, how are you doing, man?
Man, I'm honored to be on the show, and I'm excited to get into some helpful conversation.
Yes, see, that's what we need. And if you don't mind, I think I would love to start by kind of giving you the story of how I found your content, because I think it kind of speaks to where we're headed today and some of the questions I want to ask you. So I've told you this, but I'm a worship pastor in New York City. I work at a church full time, and guys like me in a role like that tend to wear a lot of hats. And I found myself as the content creator for my church, essentially. And I was like, this is really fun. And I kind of want to do this for myself. No, I really want to do this for myself. So I needed to learn some tangible and some intangible skills. I find Think Media. I'm watching your videos. I'm watching Sean's videos, Heather Torres, Nolan, all the Think Media people. And this isn't a bad thing, but I think that in the church, there are some like mannerisms, some phrases, some things that are kind of like our thing. And sure. as I'm watching Think Media videos, I'm seeing or actually hearing you guys say some of these phrases. And I found myself at one point going, I think these guys are church people. At least some of them are church people. And then, of course, I find myself on a Sean video where he's talking about being a former youth pastor. I follow you on Instagram, find out you're a pastor at your church in Vegas, which I'd love to hear about. And it kind of, for me, was this really fun moment where I'm a pastor trying to dip my toe into the content creation game. My content creation heroes, I find out, are also pastors or involved in their church community. It was just, you might call it a God thing. Yeah. And, like I said, I'm called to worship. I'm called to create content. And I know you've been asked this question before, but I want to dig into it. And I think you already know what I'm going to ask. I'm good at both. And you have a similar story that you've shared where I think it was Heather Torres, a friend of yours on the Think Media team, basically said, Omar, you don't have to choose between pastoring and content creation. You have a call and a grace to do both. But my question for you is, I completely understand that, but what does that look like practically for Omar? Like, how do you, week in and week out, actually navigate that? Or how would I, or someone like me, in a role where where they love what they're doing, but they feel called to creating and sharing what they've created, how would someone practically walk that out?
Man, beautiful. Thanks for doing your homework. I wonder what the Christianese-ism thing that we were doing or said.
It was probably like, we want to do this, but that's just an idol or something like that, where I was like, something like that.
That's funny. Yeah, man. I mean, how to practically kind of walk in the reality of maybe you're called to two things, or even called, if it's very similar like me, both I would say the ministry and the marketplace, because that's honestly the content, path I hope is entrepreneurial, and it isn't just a waste of time or just a hobby, hoping it leads to something else greater than that. And it could be, but I think on a practical level, I think the first thing was just truly accepting it. Like, because, when we start walking in our call, when it feels like it's in infancy stages, you don't see the fruit. And so you don't really know, you don't even feel like the fullness of walking in it sometimes until you see the fruit of it and see the conversation that take place and things like that. So, I mean, at that time, I wasn't even really creating. I was just I was behind the scenes. I had my own agency where I was doing work for local companies in town. I was doing weddings and things like that. But I was very behind the scenes. And then at the same time, me and my wife were overseeing our small groups at our church plant at the time, our friend's church plant, I guess you could say. And, it was just like, but I was always hesitant to just go 100% in both directions. And so it took that acceptance. I needed like almost it was like a confirmation to go, and then don't worry about the results, don't worry about how it really pans out. And my thing, honestly, I was never looking for titles, I was never looking for, I guess you could say, influence. It was just like more or less like I have gifts, I have proclivities. I have, for some reason, I just love people. I love serving people. I love shepherding people. But then didn't know I was even going to be ordained. Like that wasn't really like something that was a part of the plan. And then even more so, people think a lot about, when they think about Think Media, they think about Omar sometimes just because of their relationship with the videos they've watched. And that wasn't always the case. And, so I think it really is just knowing that you have the permission to do it if God's called you to. And that permission, even though it came from, Heather, when we had that conversation, it was like God used Heather. God uses people to get us to places where he wants us to get us, or to confirm things that he's told us maybe in private, or, if we hear the whisper of the Holy Spirit, but then gets confirmed by somebody else. So that's kind of, I would say that would be like on a practical level, it would be that. And then and maybe that isn't like such practical advice to like accept the fact that you're called to do it. But I think something that is very practical is to actually do the stinking work. Like a lot of people they're seeing the fruit of what was I didn't have someone to follow. I didn't have too much of an example of somebody who was doing it very similarly. And by similarly, I mean somebody who is working really, smart, building out content, content marketing and doing things like that, but then heavily involved in building the local church or their local church. I just didn't see that. So it is cool to see that, like, where I used to say it like this, that like tradition usually has a track and a lot of people want to follow the traditional track, but most people's call isn't traditional. It's usually unique. And if more people would walk in the uniqueness of their calling, they would create a potential possibility for someone to see them as an example. And it's cool that I'm now seeing this, as that this is a picture of my life. And that when I do these interviews, that people ask me this question, like, how do you do both? How do you figure out and in my thing, it was just, I felt God called me to it, but also I just did the work. And then now you look back and you're like, oh, it's crazy how like, I guess it worked out. I guess God honored, his call over my life.
I think you just sit in a room and think of clear and clever phrases to explain the paragraph you just said, which is also good. But you said tradition has a track.
Yeah, so I used to listen to a lot of Stephen Furtick, and I was like, man, there's some powerful about alliteration. So
yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Sometimes it comes out naturally, and sometimes, but yeah, tradition has a track. So I was raised Catholic. And, when you think about the Catholic faith is built on tradition. That's like essentially you're connected to the traditions of this religion. And when I thought about the idea of, young men that become ministers or pastors, I would say traditionally their wives are usually worship leaders. Traditionally, they were youth pastors. They went to Bible college. Traditionally, they had intern experience. Like I didn't have a church intern experience. I worked at a church, but I got hired and got to skip internship. I never went to Bible college, but somebody discipled me on proper biblical interpretation. And I learned how to, properly exegete and, interpret scripture, and then learn how to teach that. And I never, all those seeds though, I always developed. So I just never had something. When I say tradition has a track, it's like you could make up in your mind who's the person that you aspire to be, and look at you probably can like map out like, okay, first I got to do this, then it's got to go like this, then it's got to look like this. And I just see it. I mean, I see a lot of people, and not in a bad way. Sometimes it's not a trap. Sometimes it really just is like, it just is. The youth pastor, marries the kid's director, and then they go plant an Ark church, and it's a beautiful thing.
That's literally my youth pastor is married to our kid's pastor. Anyway, continue. Continue.
No, yeah. So yeah,
you're spot on
the track. No, yeah. No, but that's what I mean. I just mean that it doesn't have to look like it has been done before. And when in regards to the call of God that is on, whoever's watching this or listening's life, that the chances are it's actually going to be more unique in nature because of your experiences, because of when God got a hold of you and the type of leaders he's placed around you. It's like to really, make it look like one way, it can actually limit God in your life. And not to say God could be limited, but we could limit his power in our lives, or our ability to experience him to the fullness. And I mean, I would even say I've seen it with I was at a church, the church I used to work at as a creative director. There was a lot of people that would come through that they had an internship program. And I don't know, for whatever reason, I would say, 80% of the guys all wanted to be youth pastors. And they just all felt it had to, they always feel like it either has to be under this house, even though this house only has room for one youth pastor, or I can just be here forever and ever and ever until my time will come. But the reality is, like, if God's called you to a thing, to do a thing, I think you should see where is the faith. What would pull the faith out of you for you to walk in that? And sometimes it doesn't, I think ideally we want the perfect lineup. We want that perfect track. Like, it has to be in a city that I know I'm supposed to be at, underneath the leadership I know I'm supposed to be at, like all these perfect things. And then I'll be able to operate in my calling. When I think again, we're limiting God. And then you get these spiritually frustrated Christians because they don't get to experience the fullness of their call. And I think it's because we're waiting for the perfect situations and scenarios,
Yeah, the perfect next step. And I think that, like, I kind of want to, if I could just like keep talking about that for a minute, I want to talk a little bit more about like you specifically as a pastor. I completely I'm fully aligned in what you're saying. I completely understand what you're saying. But I just want to pause and say, I mean, you're even doing it right now. When I learned that you were a pastor, and I watched some of your sermons. Your sermons are fire, man. There's like nothing else to say. I just want to like encourage you a little bit about that.
I
like,
appreciate that.
You have this content creation. Let's call it a track. You have this content creation track. You have this ministry track as well. And I think, so, like you said, a lot of people get to see you at Think. I've gotten to see you a little bit, and others have as well. Teach. And like one thing that really struck me is when you said this. I've been thinking about this for a long time. You said, in the natural, your hunger gets louder if you don't feed it. We're hungry in the physical. Well, we just get hungrier and hungrier. In the spiritual, your hunger gets quieter if you don't feed it. If you feed yourself spiritually, you just get hungrier. And I was like, I'm looking at my phone on Instagram going, preach. And people thought I was weird. Mm-hmm. Such a good word. You're such a good teacher. And you kind of already alluded to this a little bit, but can you tell me quickly, like, which came first? Like it's like a chicken or the egg situation. Was it ministry or was it content creation? Do you view both the same? Which came first?
What came first was video. I mean, that's kind of how when I got saved in 2011, I understood a little bit of video. I was making music videos for my friends who rapped and stuff like that. But it was Sean Cannell, who's actually the founder of Think Media. He was the director of communications. And I just started serving. This was the first time I got plugged in at a church that had, the avenue to be able to serve in the context of media. And so just being able to do, it was church news at the time, not too many people are doing church news anymore, but just getting involved that way. Yeah. But using my gifts in that regard to build the local church, that was new to me and that was fresh, but it also allowed me to hone my skills. And then I shortly thereafter I got hired and even my leadership skills started to grow. And then, just the skills on overall, like everything that encompasses video and how it communicates and understanding, like you can make certain videos that are only going to be played in the auditorium. So let's create a video that that captures the room, or whereas we're making this, testimony video, it's going to be uploaded to the YouTube channel. So learning the different contexts, but all that is communication, right? Like all that is learning how things will be received by a watcher or a listener. We would make these promo videos for some conferences we'll be throwing on, and we'll invite, well-known guest speakers, right? And so I'll fish through sermons to find just a 15 to 45 second clip that hopefully encapsulates the theme of the conference that in that 14 or in that 40-second clip that you wouldn't need context. It all was there. So what that even taught me, generally speaking, was which I don't think a lot of people have because they don't take the time to like really study, and I don't blame them, but is the intuition of communication. And so when me finding these sermon clips, it actually was teaching me that like, oh, you can be very powerful in when you're communicating a thought, that you can actually communicate it without it, so that when you do want to chop it up later, and not saying like I wasn't thinking about this in my sense eventually, but as I'm starting to communicate now, that I do think about that. I think about, okay, so here in this moment, I have this ability to, unpack this. How can I do it in a streamlined way without being repetitive, this and the other? And I would go on to say that I probably have the best, person to have helped me in my communication as far as in ministry with Pastor Jabin, just being able to be mentored and coached by him, and him giving me all these little nuggets and insights when it comes to preaching. But I would say the video side of it came first, and I'm glad I was able to get a lot of, my awkwardness taken out on video, that like me doing it on stage, it isn't as much different, because I watch myself back, even before I started preaching, I was watching my videos. How can I be better? Oh, I need filler words like and like, I need to stop that. And then really becoming shortly thereafter a student of communication. And so when I'm watching videos, I'm watching so much more than just the video itself, right? I'm seeing how the delivery is. When I'm watching comedians, when I'm watching other sermons, I'm studying. Like, I'm like, oh, wow, that's crazy that they just took them from here to here and they changed the inflection of their voice, and it drew me in closer. So I've become shortly, in a short amount of time, a student of communication, and it has benefited both on camera communication as well as on stage communication. And I'm also speaking at like conferences. Last week I spoke at a mastermind in Atlanta. There was about 30 people in the room, but it was like I think it's like a $50,000 buy-in to be in that room. And those people need a different kind of communication than a preachy communication, So, just being a student of it was really key. But I definitely think video was the egg or the chicken, I guess you could say.
I have always wondered that, like, which came first, ministry content creation. And you're saying like the video came first, but then it seems like it's kind of all like melding together. And you live this life where now I'm telling you how you live your life, but the life that we get to see you play out is these streams of, like you said, ministry and marketplace and leadership in both. And I really wanted to ask you this, as someone who watches you in these different spaces, it's really attractive what you get to say yes to. So brand partnerships, speaking at conferences like you're talking about, there's a lot of clout in there that's really attractive. And so many small time creators like me, I watch them give interviews and they're like, what's it like to do this? And what's it like to do this? But I guess in all the spaces you're running in and all the context you find yourself in, what do you say no to that's allowing you to grow, that's making you successful? All the stuff that you get to say yes to, we see. What behind the scenes are you saying no to that has helped you grow?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. I honestly would say I'm saying no to so much opportunity. Like, I have this last, year or some, I've experienced, and I feel like I've been able to see the amount of opportunity that I'm choosing to not, tap in with, because I understand pace of life. I also try to protect that pace. I want to be home on Sundays because I want to be in the place. And then I also don't want it to take away from what I'm truly trying to build. And so I would say with unlimited opportunity, maybe it feels like people see that all I'm doing is, doing. I told you, you asked me how often do I do these every day? I probably could do 3 of these a day, but I probably do, a couple a month, because it doesn't always directly benefit, as my dog's barking. I don't know if you guys can hear my dog bark, but it doesn't directly benefit kind of what the end goal is, or the big picture. And so if any opportunity essentially robs from me being able to still go out on those coffee dates with guys that walk up to me on Sunday and would like a meeting with Pastor Omar, or, takes me away from being involved with small groups at the level me and my wife are involved in, that I feel like I don't want to lose. I would lose sight on what really matters most. And I really do. I mean, obviously huge impact and influence is amazing, but what really matters most is eternity. That's what really matters most. And so if I start pulling back from things I should be more involved in at church, because I want to make more money, I think I'll miss it. And I'm grateful that I have the wisdom. I'm grateful that I have the people in my life that I can always run these opportunities by. But yeah, I think it's actually, I'm saying no to opportunity, which I think a lot of people would probably say yes to.
Yeah. That's so good. And you actually already kind of like, I really wanted to ask you this as well, if you don't mind. You're kind of already hitting on my next question. Like, I've been a worship pastor since I was 13. Well, probably, wow. Leader, pastor, whatever. Which and I've been in New York City for the past 18 years. Really contentious space, beautiful city, contentious space. Leading worship since I was 13. All that makes me is old. That's all it makes me. I'm not a pro. I'm not the best, but I can understand when people say things like leadership is lonely. I'm not saying it has to be, but I understand when people say, leadership is lonely. I get that. And you're someone who, like I said, you lead in both lanes you run in. So like, you're not at your church saying, what kind of groups are available? Like you said, you're leading one, you're involved. You're also in the content creation space. You're a voice that's sought after, like you said. Great things, nothing wrong with that. But unfortunately, I think we see time and time again in both of these spaces, we just hear story after story of burnout, of darkness, of people that we consider to be really successful, just failing miserably, like giving into just all sorts of things. So I wanted to ask you, like, in both of these places, like in content creation, in ministry, what does your support system look like, and what does accountability look like? You've kind of already mentioned it a little bit, like you have people that you bring those opportunities to. What does that look like for you in real life as you're trying to make these decisions about what to say yes to, what to say no to, and essentially how to move forward and grow?
Yeah, I mean, I think my accountability would probably start with, the home life. My home life is pretty wholesome. I have an incredible wife. I have a 4-year-old daughter, and so much of what everybody sees is what, Amanda has allowed me to do, right? Like, I think there's so much, but it's unseen, people don't see that, but the home life is awesome. Not to compare with people, but we got married young, we're going to celebrate 10 years in May. And that's the time everybody listening would clap. Just as you guys are driving, you would clap. No, but my marriage is a huge place of accountability, because that's the first place I run to. My wife is the first person I tell when I'm feeling like I'm in a rut. Like, babe, I just feel like I'm in a dry season, and let's fast. Let's take 3 days, like, so that's level one. I think level two, and it's very near level one, is the morning routine. Like, I'm an adamant wake up, spend 15 to 30 minutes with God, like Proverbs of the day, couple chapters in the New Testament, got a John Maxwell Devo, get my mind going. And then I'm off to the races as far as my day goes. And I think that it's been the compound interest of those just foundational, very essentially, you could say boring things, but those are the things that keep it pretty solid throughout all the season of growth and all that stuff. Which has been amazing. And then I would say that the next level is, yes, the community, right? Like, I think you can really make yourself irrelevant when you put yourself in isolation. So it is those coffee dates that just bring it back down. I'm talking, and I'm not saying this, I'm saying this as a lack of a better term, but I'm like, if I'm meeting with like quote unquote nobodies, right? They don't even know who Omar is, right? I'm Pastor Omar, and they want to know what they need help reading the Bible. They need help. They need somebody to be accountable to them, or that they can be accountable to. And so these things are honestly, I guess, is what keeps me, I guess you could say, humble. It's what keeps me low to the ground. It doesn't, my head won't get that big, and it really is, and it's nice that I have that reset. So having that opportunity last week, speaking in a room like that, and then I go to church, and then I'm meeting people on Sunday who would like to grab coffee and talk through because they just gave their life to Jesus, and it's like, okay, like this is the work that really matters,
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. It kind of brings you back to like what really matters. I heard this story once where, of course, I mean, you can't talk to a worship pastor without hearing about Bono. Whenever he comes, I don't even know if this is true, but I heard that whenever he comes home from going on tour, his wife goes, "Welcome home. Go to a hotel room for a week." And it allows him just to decompress, realize what I'm assuming, and realize what real life is, come home and be like, "Oh yeah, this is what really matters," which I've never been in that position. I'm kind of frequently aware of what really matters, but I have three kids and an amazing wife in an apartment in New York City. But I can understand those accountability structures. It seems like you have some stuff in place where you get these opportunities that you've been able to say yes to because you processed it well, and those opportunities you're learning, you're growing. We're watching you do those things, but it's because you have a stable system of accountability and support. And I wanted to ask you, like, it's so funny. You keep hitting every question I want to ask because I get to watch you do those things because I follow your socials, Instagram, YouTube, etc. And clearly, I think that my opinion is most people view these platforms, especially YouTube and Instagram, as fun ways to engage with friends and brands, right? To maybe to learn something. But as a creator, there comes a point where you have to view these platforms with at least a little bit of a business mindset. So
100.
Where's your tipping point there? Like, so you're in a position where you can post about the video department, you can post about Think Media, you can post about like a quick video tip and cute family photos. Is that something that you eventually earn as a creator, or is it something you choose to do? And like, for anybody listening, like too long didn't read version, is everything you post intentional? Are you always in strategy mode? Or is it possible for a creator to dance between fun social media and intentional growth strategy when posting anywhere?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's more of a ratio, an intentional ratio that maybe I'm not 100% thinking about. But one thing that I do know is that the main reason for the use of social media and YouTube, my main reason is business. Yeah. So a lot of things just come to that, just comes to the mercy of that idea that it's business. So, if a acquaintance of mine doesn't get a happy birthday shout out, I mean, it does eliminate a lot of, potential hurting people, because it's like, no, I had a trigger moment. Like there was a moment where I flipped the switch. I was like, I'm going to go all in. I'm just going to be very intentional with my Instagram, because a year ago on Instagram, I probably had like 5,000 followers. And that was just organically posting here and there and maybe spillover from YouTube. But it wasn't until I committed to posting like almost a reel a day for quite some time. And then, I saw an increased growth, and I was like, okay. It was really, the unlock was when I saw other people who didn't see it as had personal use to it, like it was business first. And then seeing the opportunity that presented itself when I, organically launched a coaching program that wasn't cheap, and I got a lot of people to sign up for it. I was like, wow, there's actually something powerful here. However, with the increase of I understand as a believer and as somebody who's obviously the main goal is to reach people, is that I am going to leverage the influence I now have. Now that I've won you over, this is kind of like, I talk about this is strategic in nature as far as how I am just living my life as someone who wants to tell more people about the Lord, right? And even if you don't know me as Pastor Omar, and I'm just content coach Omar, right? So I'm going to leverage that, and I do that by a few different ways. One thing I love about Instagram is it's probably the fastest platform that you can grow a personal brand from. And what I mean by that is you can build a brand around your persona, right? Like when somebody looks at you, this is great. Like you're able to articulate my personal brand, which is content creator and someone and a pastor, right? That's kind of my personal brand. And I would say I don't post that many preaching clips, because I'm also not preaching 1,000 times a year. I'm only preaching maybe 6-10 times a year. But because of stories gives you the permission to post whatever you want, right? So I think that's what's cool about Instagram is you can be very intentional with what you're posting consistently on your feed and for reels. But for stories, there's no rules. Like you can literally show your interest there, show what you like doing. I do this thing on Sundays where I take pictures of my notes, and people are starting to like, it's becoming a thing for people, you know? So I definitely leverage it. And, you know, I posted about, we had a huge Easter egg hunt. That was a very specific, I won't do that all the time because I see it like if you're intentional with the consistency of posting content online and it's valuable content, educational, empowering, entertaining, that you're winning. You're earning what I call asks, right? You're earning this ability to ask because you're giving out so much free content. And I feel personally that I've earned up certain amount of asks per year where I'll push and I'll sell and I'll ask people to do something. And one of those I want to use for church, you know? So yeah, I put together a fun little reel. I posted it, and then Pastor Jabin was like, hey, you know, collaborate with the church on that post. And it was cool. That post got, you know, 18,000 views. And I don't know how much people saw that post and then came to the egg hunt, but it brought awareness. I'm sure people clicked on our church, and I'm sure a reel probably got served on the algorithm from our church. And so it's not always like the direct thing, but all that to say, I definitely use my asks at times to draw people into what is my world and what I think is important, you know? And so, yeah, I mean, and I kind of go back to just Paul when he says, be all things to all people, or become all things to all people. Like if I can help you with your needs, and they're very practical, and they're going to help you live a better life as far as helping you share your message or grow your business because you're going to start making videos and this, that, and the other, then that means I've earned probably a little bit of your ear. And I think that's why I've been able to do this in a very strategic and very, I think, you know, I guess you could say seasoned way. Like, I mean, nobody's mad, you know, or looking at me or looking down at me when things I don't know. It's like, it's because I built trust with people. And even my friends that have come along this last few years that don't know the Lord, but they're doing really well in business, they trust me as someone they can ask for prayer from. When we hang out, we're talking about marriage, we're talking about family, and so it's a beautiful thing. And I think it goes beyond the feed itself, because really when the relationships start coming in from all this influence, then you're really seeing like the impact that you can make on a human being's life still.
Dude, that's so good. Oh man, that's really good. There's so much to unpack there, but I got just a couple more questions for you. And I have a couple of podcasts, one very church specific, one very content specific. And I mean, I think this applies to both, to be honest with you. And I love asking church leaders that I get to interview, if you were hiring a worship pastor today, like what qualities would you be looking for? And I know that I'd actually like to ask you that question from a content creation perspective. Like, Omar's now the boss of Think Media, right? Great. Sean's still around, but you've been promoted, and you're looking at bringing in content creators, and you're looking for those tangible and those intangible qualities. Can you just tell us, like, what would you look for in a candidate, or even like what are the red flags?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'm looking for a lot of the times when I'm personally even hiring somebody, if I need special work done or what have you, but in this context, if I was hiring somebody for Think Media, number one would be character, that like as a wholesome human being, that your yes is your yes and your no is no. And that you have, like, you can articulate the values in your life, like, and that you live by them. This is character. You know what I love about integrity is simply being the same person in every room. So like, you're the same when you're at a staff meeting, you're the same when we're hanging out on a Saturday, you're the same if we had to take a travel trip to a conference, that you're the same, and I've seen it even in so many different aspects of my growth, even in the Army, that when people are given titles or when people are given, access, they act differently. And that's not what I tend to look for. I like character. I like, people who are just steadfast, that they're not so high and so low. and I don't mean by like you're monotone, like kind of I am sometimes, but like that you kind of hold yourself in a high regard, and you know nothing shakes you, and you could sense that. I love that in a person. And then I think the biggest thing after those two are just that you are committed to learning, because I think a learner's posture is always out to try something new, but is always okay to be corrected, is also okay to share insight. But I don't know. I mean, and I think it's because a lot of times I just look for like mini me's, you know, mini versions of me. And I just remembered like I would not be paid. I wasn't getting paid to learn skills. Like I would go home and study up on YouTube and find out how I can do different things in this editing software. And the reason I know how to use cameras so well is because I would, every little time I would run into a hiccup or something, I would figure out the way to fix it. And you do that over the course of time, and then you understand cameras. Like no one could, you know, somebody could literally text me a random question about a Sony camera, and I'll probably know the answer to it, even if it's random. But no one told me to do that. It was just because I liked learning. And so I think if you can be a learner that has character, dude, you can take over the world. And that's what a disciple is, right? A disciple is essentially a learner, someone who's committed to the learnings of Jesus, the teachings of Jesus. And if you have that posture, I feel like you can achieve anything, and you can excel in any job that you're given.
Yeah, I think I was talking to someone once where for worship leading, I think one of the biggest gifts you can carry with you, one of the biggest skills you can have is teachability. So like, you know, learning, teachability. I could not resonate with you more there. I think that's amazing. So I know I kind of mentioned this earlier because again, you're just like hitting all the stuff I want to talk about. But the last thing I wanted to ask you before we kind of just like sign off and we get to hear about a little bit about, you know, what's going on in your world and what you'd like to know about you is you have over the years thrown out some of these quick phrases that I have lived off of. I mean, I have just, when it comes to, oh, by the way, I just noticed you're wearing a Mets hat.
Oh yeah, that's random.
Much respect.
I mean, no, it's because I, respect to you. Yeah.
Respect, bro. Okay, thank you. Okay, we've got to move on. That's a different podcast. I should start it. But you've thrown out these phrases over the years that I've just eaten off of that I love. I'm going to give you a couple of them. Don't make content, be the content. That was the most recent one I heard from you. That just blew my mind. Have the camera rolling when you're doing whatever it is you do. This blew my mind. Visibility beats ability. If you're the best at what you do, but nobody knows, are you really the best? What's the intent of my content? The question I should ask every time before I start, before I hit record. And the key to competency is curiosity. And I love this one because I have an IT business that I just do on the side. And I tell people all the time, like doing IT or you know, tech support or whatever you want to call it, it's not about knowing all the answers. We are the people who know how to find the answers.
Find the answers, yeah.
Kind of like what you're talking about when it comes to cameras and things like that. I just want to ask you, and I think I already know the answer, but like, are there any of those phrases that you look back on and go, man, I wish I could change that just a bit? Or do you still feel like those are all like gospel in your content creation process?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's nuances when it comes to each of them because, you know, the don't make content, be the content. I think it works for somebody who's just starting out and maybe it, you know, feels like it's a little intimidating to look into the lens. But at the same time, I can't control, you know, people's lack of knowledge that they're sharing. You know, like that's what's unfortunate about the internet is that anyone can actually do this thing, even if they don't know what they're talking about. But I think it's a good way to just get started if you don't want to look into the lens, which is why I like getting started on Instagram, because in that case, you can literally just throw on your phone and record. I mean, I think that if there's really one that I would maybe, you know, kind of hedge on, it would be visibility beats ability, because, you know, I have to make sure, this sounds so like maybe carnal, but like I have to make sure I believe in what I'm saying and that there's conviction in what I'm saying and that I make. And this is a marketing tool, but if you make what it is you have to offer seem important, then you're doing a good job, right? And so what I mean by that is saying a line like visibility beats ability. It's true in some sense, but I wouldn't call it like truth, when it comes to content creation. And that is because you could be really good at something and never make videos at it. And the Bible still talks about if you're skilled in your works, that you'll sit amongst kings, and that you can your gifts will make a way for you. So not always is that true, like visibility beats ability. Man, I guess I got to start making content. No, because like, what if you suck at communication but you're really good at coding? If you're really good at coding and you have clients and maybe you do consultations, and cool, you probably can thrive, and do some awesome work. I have a friend who his dad is a well maintenance person, like in Washington, and he's a multimillionaire. That dude spent $0 on marketing. He's made 0 videos. I don't even think he has a logo, and he's about to sell his business for multiple millions. And that dude doesn't produce content, but he's really good at what he does. So I would say the visibility beats ability. That's for somebody who knows that they have something in them, that you have something to offer. For you do have people that you want to help. That where we're at now in the world, the people getting invited to speak at conferences are usually the people that have podcasts, that have content they're putting out, that are known online for something. This is the power of personal branding, which I always like to tell people, like, we all have one personal brand. So how you choose to use it is on you, and you just should be very wise on how you do so, because if you get that, become viral for the wrong thing, then you might be known for the person, who knows, Charlie bit me, right? Like, claim to fame. That's what your claim to fame is in life, is Charlie bit me. But it doesn't have to be that. It could actually, your claim to fame, and by fame I mean your claim to be known for something, could simply be the thing that you're actually good and can bring to this world. And video will allow you to do that at such a powerful level, because I say video is like the greatest multiplier of time. What other action can you do tomorrow that could be multiplied by in a minute after doing it, by shooting a piece of content, by filming yourself be the content, whatever that may be, and uploading it, and then that being seen, for however many people see it. There's no other powerful thing. I mean, there's no other thing that can multiply as quickly in that regard. So that's where I see the opportunity. And I think for some people, they should take that with a grain of salt. If they're supposed to, put their message out there and help people, and you can help a lot of people with video.
That's such an amazing answer. And I was going to ask you, like, I said, which one's I was going to say, like, which one's your favorite, or you kind of just hit all of that. And I think that's amazing. So I really want to respect your time. And I know we've got to get out of here pretty soon. So please, would you take some time to tell us, like, what are next steps for Omar? Why should everybody sign up for the video department? What do you want us to know about you? Where can we follow you and see all the amazing things you're creating?
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, if you're listening or watching this, you can follow me on Instagram. That's kind of like my main platform that I'm actually on. And so that would be Omar El-Takrori. You'll put a link in the show notes because nobody knows how to spell that. But I'm very active in the DMs. If you have a question, chances are I'll be able to get to it. And yeah, I started a coaching program that's called the Video Department. And I'm just trying to help, entrepreneurs. But there are a handful of people that are actually in ministry. I have a worship leader, I have a youth pastor, and they've joined the program because they too want to be able to utilize video. And essentially, it's a content coaching program where I'll show you and help you, guide you into setting up your setup based on what your type of content you're trying to accomplish in the fastest way possible, and then show you the how to attack YouTube and Instagram correctly, so you don't feel like you're just uploading videos crossing your fingers, because that doesn't have to be the case. And then Think Media. Think Media is a YouTube channel that I post content on, tutorials, and you'll find a lot of great information if you just watched a video a day for a season. You'll learn the game of YouTube. You'll learn a little bit about tech and some tools that'll help you create content. And it's a great place to subscribe to. And we're uploading about 3 to 5 times a week. And so this is all free content, so you can check it out. And yeah, if you're interested in potentially joining my coaching program whenever this airs, but I might be enrolling, but I'm always taking people on the wait list so that when it does open up, that you can join in. So you can find that all out on my Instagram. And yeah, I'm grateful that you had me on. I was glad that I was able to share a little bit of my story, and I hope that it would encourage some people that listen or watch this to do what God's called them to do ultimately, whether that's create content or not create content, whether that's serve people faithfully or lead from the front in that regard, or whatever it may be, that you feel more confident to step into that calling, even though you don't see the fruit quite yet.
It's amazing. It's amazing to talk to you. I'm so thankful for. They're actually, I'm doing this for others, of course, and I want other people to hear your voice and share. But I'm gonna go watch this back myself, just for all those little nuggets that you shared that turn into big rocks in the content creation world, in the ministry space. I'm so thankful for your voice. I'm so thankful for your time, and I really look forward to maybe someday down the road meeting together again, man.
Heck yeah, man! Come down to Vegas. Everybody comes to Vegas.
Yeah. Let's go, baby. Come to NYC. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one.
All right.
Thank you so much to Omar for giving your time to the podcast today, and thank you for watching. Don't forget that everything you need and everything that we discussed today is linked down in the description. But we're not quite done. You should probably watch this video too.